nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alt? Mr. Meister? Mr. Calero?
Here.
Mrs. Love? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Here.
Mrs. Rhodes? Mrs. Shipley? Here. Mr. Vance?
Here, let the record show that Mrs. Love called and said they had a sickness in the family. She had to stay home and take care of that. Citizens' comments?
Catherine Fike.
Just for an update for anyone that doesn't know, rules for participation in citizens' comments as per the current board policy 06 and 903. Please be advised that citizens' comments is your opportunity to present your information to the board in regard to our agenda, items, and/or Southmoreland schools. It is not expected to be a dialogue between you and the board. Do not expect any remarks or responses to any comments that you make today. It is our intention to take these comments seriously and resolve such matters as deemed necessary. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question board members individually. Also note that we will not permit any statements that exceed 5 minutes. You will be notified when you have 30 seconds remaining to speak. We also cannot permit any statements that are personally directed or obscene, abusive, or irrelevant as decided by the presiding officer. All speakers must preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, and any group affiliation if appropriate. This is to ensure that only Southmoreland citizens or those deemed as such are speaking to the board. Thank you for your interest in Southmoreland schools. Dr. Fike?
My comments today are regarding a policy that was posted for public review, number 903, public participation in board meetings. This policy states, quote, all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question a board member individually. Here's the problem. It makes no sense. Every presiding officer is an individual board member. If one cannot address any individual board member, how do we address the presiding officer who is a board member? Do we talk to an empty chair? Also, nowhere does it state in the policy that a board member can or cannot voluntarily respond to or address a speaker. My next concern deserves an immediate response because you have violated your own policy. Nowhere in the policy does it state that a speaker cannot address the superintendent or any of the other 7 people sitting at the tables. Please be so kind as to tell me why I was ruled out of order when I addressed the administration. From what I can tell, you violated your own policy, and my question is, are you exempt from following the rules yourself? Referencing the newspaper article reported about the meeting on 1/15/15, it quotes Gail Rhodes as follows, quote, coming to the voting meeting and speaking on an issue after we vote is a moot point. This is a dictionary. The definition of a moot point is that which can be argued, in dispute, debatable, doubtful, or to bring forward a point, a subject, or a case for discussion.
Can you move on because you're...
That is what moot means. The very correct definition of this term was initiated and substantiated by directors Calero and Alt. Since 3 directors are concerned with moot issues, it would behoove the board to include the fact that the end result of every vote becomes a moot point. These points are designed to be discussed, debated, and clearly revisited. Also in the newspaper report is the relevance of Mr. Miller's comment to the policy. He recommends that you should, quote, I'm quoting a newspaper, expand the period at the beginning of the meeting to allow citizens to discuss school-related matters. Now, I cannot ask him to explain that concept, but as presiding officer, Mr. Bentz, will you please ask him to elaborate? Did he mean changing the 5-minute limit to 10 or 20 minutes? How would he expand the time at the beginning of the meeting? The present form of the policy states that you may adjourn or remove a speaker for unreasonable decorum. Exactly how is that defined? How is that in the policy? Who decides that? Does it mean if you don't like a person or what they're saying, you can throw them out or have them arrested? What if an entire audience boos or voices its disapproval? Do you throw them all out or have them all arrested, or just some of them? I would like an explanation of that concept. I await a response and public discussion of these issues as required by the Sunshine Law. These are policy matters, and nothing is more important. Also, I'm waiting to hear back from you regarding the issue that I raised, the concern that I had at previous meetings. I received a one-line letter from your attorney telling me that he will do nothing. I deeply appreciate Mr. Beistel's comment. The public is paying the bills. We should hear what they have to say. I would like to publicly thank Mr. Marnell for his prompt, polite, and very responsible reply to my inquiry regarding pension payments. He has certainly taken the high road. And he must be doing a very good job because, as the superintendent said, Southmoreland School District is rolling in cash. I certainly hope that we can resolve my issue without taking it beyond the district. Thank you.
Next item, please.
And next we have Mr. Zach Cavalier. Zach is one of our high school science teachers, and he has a presentation for us with respect to a grant he was able to receive through a Donors Choose program. And part of what he's going to be showing us is on the projector, so I would invite you down to the front table so you're able to see the screen, please.
I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about my Donors Choose grant. I applied for it before Christmas, and I received it in the first week of January. It is really something that enhances the learning of the kids in my classroom. That picture's not a great picture, but you kind of get a taste of the old and the new. On the right-hand side, we have the chalkboards in the science classrooms, and this device allows me to create digital media for the kids to consume at their own convenience or during my classroom lectures. I link stuff to my AP Bio Twitter account, and it's really a great learning tool. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Donors Choose first. I don't work for them, but I think it was a really awesome vehicle to provide the funding for this item. So the item in question is the item I'm using to control the computer right now. It is wirelessly linked, so I can be anywhere in my classroom and do my thing. But Donors Choose is crowdfunding. If you're familiar with Kickstarter or any of those sorts of crowdfunding appliances that exist online, this is specifically crowdfunding for public education, and most projects under $400 get fully funded. This just tipped the scales just above $400, but you know, it's really a great thing. And 70% of all projects are fully funded, which is great. And for donors, the donation is a tax deduction. When someone would choose to raise funds or try to raise funds for a project, the means by which that kind of plays out, the teacher in question would create a project, explain their situation, why the project would be vital to their classroom, and then that project is featured on the Donors Choose website. And an interesting tool is the ability to share via social media. I shared my project, and some of my friends were able to donate a few dollars here and there. which really made it nice. And one of the really great things, occasionally major businesses will donate a significant sum of money to match funds. So I really only had, I lucked out. That was going on when my project was live, and I really only had to come up with about $300 of donors. The other 300 or the other 280 was provided by the matching funds. To receive funding, or after the item is provided to sort of complete the deal, the agreement with Donors Choose, the project starter has to provide a few pictures of the item in use to Donors Choose, a personalized written thank you from the teachers to the donors if they request it. There is one that's also published to the website that any donor would see, and student impact statements and thank you notes to donors that request them. And this is all done sort of anonymously. The kids just make a statement about what they like about the project, why it's helping them in their classroom, how it's enhanced their learning, and so forth. And then those get shipped off to Donors Choose, where they're again screened to ensure the anonymity of the student. They can sign their name like Sincerely Sally, but beyond that, the donor doesn't know what school it came from or the student. They just know that it was this particular project that they had funded. It maintains the anonymity of the students in the classroom, but it is a requirement for funding. So it's a little bit of legwork on the end of the teacher kind of seeking the grant, but it is certainly worthwhile. What I received is called a Wacom Intuos tablet. It allows for very high resolution drawing. I save my lecture notes daily. Everything goes into a file now, and if kids miss school or if kids would like copies of my notes, I can just email them or tweet them, and they can access them again at their convenience. And like I said, this costs about $400. There's a little bit of overhead for Donors Choose. They take a little cut of that, so it ended up being closer to $500 after all was said and done. But the best part is I got this for nothing to the school district. It showed up in my classroom one morning. It was pretty cool. It was like Christmas, around Christmas time. Here's a drawing I created, and this is, right now we can't interact because we're in PowerPoint, but this is the human ear, and I was able to create something that is, I can interact and draw and kind of do my thing on it, and the kids are capable of watching it. And again, this is much more detail than they would put in their notes, but they can access this later. So their notes and this are kind of in synergy. So I'd like to thank my donors, and I didn't put a list of them because a lot of them donate anonymously. People just are out of the goodness of their heart. They don't actually want any recognition. They just want to do something nice for public ed, which is kind of a cool thing. Anyway, I just want to show you very quickly the item in action. So what I've done here, I have a diagram of the eyeball. I teach anatomy, human anatomy, and just have a diagram of the eyeball. So I could very quickly just, go on here and make a nice label and say, okay, this is the vitreous. I usually write neater. I'm just kind of in a hurry. Vitreous humor. I'm trying not to take a ton of your time. The vitreous humor. Okay, over here, I can highlight this. I can enlarge it to make it easier for people to see what I'm talking about. I can paste pictures in from the textbook that we use, the website that's we have for our textbooks. All this stuff then becomes sort of interactive, and then I can take notes right on it for the kids to use. So it's a very cool project. I'm, as you can probably tell, pretty excited about it. And I really would like to thank you for your time in hearing this, because this is the kind of thing that exists out there. And I don't know, I'm sure other people are doing these same things in our district. But anyway, do you have any questions about it or anything like that? Yes, sir.
Obviously, you go online if you want to do a donation.
Yeah.
Is this like a national where it can
Oh.
be all over the country? Is that how does that work? Or do you try to solicit locally?
Well, I tried to beat the bushes with my friends and try to drum up some business, but my friends donated maybe $25. I had an anonymous donor donate, I think, $100 to the project. I had Horace Mann donated $50 to the project. again, there were a lot of not.
Somebody could be in California, see this project online, say that's a good project, I'll donate $50, and that's how you would get it.
Absolutely. And another kind of neat thing that happens, I shared it on my Facebook page. My friends shared it on their Facebook page. And if people like the story, they share it on their Facebook page. So it sort of snowballs, and it gets out there, and a lot of eyes are on something like this. So it is really a viable source of, this is sort of a big ticket item. I mean, it seems not like it, but it's sort of a big ticket item. I would never probably seek this, but since I could get it for no cost to the district, I thought it was something very worthwhile, and I did so. So anyway, any other questions you? Yeah, a lot of times kids are out for a field trip or just illness, and they'll come back and they'll say, Mr. Cavalier, what were the notes from yesterday? I say, I'll email them to you, or I'll tweet them, and it's a great way to kind of get that out to them with very little pain on their end. It's hard to get the lecture notes if you weren't there, even if you're relying on another student. Sometimes, we were all kids once. I don't think we all probably took the greatest notes every day, and certainly getting it firsthand is much better than secondhand. So, anyway, that's all I have for you. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's nice. That is nice. I can't.
Let the record show that Mr. Alt made it.
Party. But he's here.
The project that Mr. Cavalier showed you is one of several projects that we've been able to realize here at Southmoreland through the DonorsChoose.org website. It's been a very good website for classrooms in our district, and it's benefited our students in many ways. So, Zach, thank you again for coming and sharing that with us. Appreciate it. Next, Lynn Huggins is going to talk to us for a moment about an opportunity that was presented to her today. And she's just more or less going to give you a little bit of information about something that we're maybe going to partner with our PTAs to get involved with. We need to do a little bit more research on this, but just to give you a heads up.
Sorry if I'm not real versed on this topic. The phone call just came in today. It was forwarded to our office. It's from an organization called Champions for Kids, and they reach out in the community to try to work with local entities to collect items for kids that basically they need to thrive. So they are looking at a fundraiser locally in a major department store where they are going to put out bins in the hopes that local people will donate foods. And then what they're looking for is a partner who would be us to collect those and then get them to the students in need who might need them. So the program that they're looking at will go on for a 2-week period, and the bins will go up for that 2 weeks. They'll be near registers, and people can basically go through the store and then throw the items in the bins. So our responsibilities, as explained to us, would take about 5 or 6 man-hours during the period. They would ask us to promote it, send out press releases, send out information to parents, and at the school district level, we would want to decide how we would disseminate these items that are collected. We'll be responsible for picking them up from the store. once they're all donated, so things like that. So probably what we'd be looking to do is work with the principals who aren't aware of this yet to find out, the best way to disseminate the items, maybe get PTA involved to see if they can volunteer some time. But that's basically what we know about it at this point. Perhaps I can send more information for the board next week once we get a little bit more.
Thanks, Lynn. And on that same topic of kids, we do have hungry kids in this district. Center Bethel Church of God in Alberton approached us several months ago, wanting to know if they could do something about some of the hunger issues we have. And they actually started a backpack program where they're sending backpacks home to students on weekends that are filled with snacks and sustenance for them. They started this program in October. Started out with 25 backpacks that are being filled weekly with all kinds of things. In November, it became 26, and in December, it's 29. So every week, the individuals from this church are filling 29 backpacks, delivering them to our nurses, who then distribute them on a Friday afternoon. So kids who might otherwise be a little bit hungry on weekends and their families have something to eat. Right now, there are 9 local businesses that are partnering with that church and the community, and thus far, in terms of monetary donations, they've had $3,100 just in monetary donations. And I can get down this list: 400 and some breakfast bars donated, 500 and some packages of cheese crackers, and then the list goes on and on and on. So first of all, thanks to the people of that church, and also the people in the community who support that project, because it's certainly a worthwhile project for many of our families. I've asked Charlie to come and talk to us, Charlie Swink, a little bit about our current winter sports programs. He gave you an update last month, and give you another little update this month on where our winter sports teams are.
The sports seasons are pretty much coming to an end this week. Tomorrow's the last basketball game. The wrestling season now is all individual. Our wrestling team did very well. They placed third in the sections. They went into the WPIL Team Championship. Excuse me?
Second
Second in the section. That's the basketball. Wrestling was third. The basketball team plays second. They'll get it. They'll be in the playoffs. They'll know their opponent on Tuesday night. The first game could be possibly Thursday or Friday. We'll know that opponent once they do. They do like if you ever watched on college, the WPL kind of does that thing where they're ranked and they pull them, so they'll know their opponent. Both teams did very well. The girls had a solid season. Competed very well with a lot of teams. Their last game is actually tonight up at York, and we're looking for a win there. But the wrestling team now will start their individuals. We have several kids that I think can do very well. We're hoping to get a couple of those kids into states and, again, represent Southmoreland. We also have an opportunity for a young lady, Taylor Robbins. She is going to possibly be singing the national anthem for the boys AAA final for the WPILs down at the Peterson Event Center. That'll be a Friday night at 9 o'clock. So Taylor volunteered. I called it, or sent it to the WPL, and right now it looks like she's picked, and that'll be a great honor for her, and it'll represent Southmoreland pretty nicely at the WPIL finals. And I think it's about all the update. Do you want me to talk a little bit about this middle school?
We'll get to that.
On the
agenda. Thanks, yeah.
But overall, the winter sports went very well. Spring will start now here in another month. Baseball, softball, and track, and all teams look like they should have a pretty good opportunity to do very well with their respective sport as well. Any questions?
Thanks, Charlie.
Minutes?
Yeah, next week you'll be asked to approve the minutes from the January 8th discussion meeting and the January 15th voting meeting.
Questions? Hearing none. Finance?
You'll also be asked to approve the financial reports, the treasurer's reports, and so forth. As soon as those copies are available from the bank, we will forward them to you, probably in next week's packet, for your review and approval. And Lori Hanchar, Brian Rager has asked that Lori Hanchar be appointed Deputy Tax Collector for Everson Borough. Lori is currently the Upper Tyrone Township Tax Collector, so she would be the deputy for Mr. Rager, and we'll ask you to approve that as well. We approved several of those last month, as you might recall.
Questions? Hearing none. Seeing no discussion. Old business?
Yeah, I gave you this evening policies of 006 and 903, copies of those policies reflecting the discussion that we had last week. They're not in your packet, but rather your table. So those are reflective of Mr. Botanic's input as well as the discussion that we had last week. So we won't be voting on those next week because of the required 30-day posting period, but I would ask you to review those, and then when we have our discussion meeting next month, we'll have an opportunity to make sure that the wishes of the board were included in those current drafts.
Any questions on that?
Just a question. As I recall, the amendment then that was voted on was basically to say we go with the existing policy except for technical issues, and that's what this basically represents at every moment.
That's correct. But again, I'd like to make sure that I capture the spirit of what you're after.
And what you provided us tonight, that is what we will be voting on, not what we provided in the packet.
What you received tonight
It will be the final draft, and we'll vote on that.
Tell me next month.
Right, okay. No,
Yes.
that's fine.
Yes, that's correct.
Any more questions? Hearing none, reduce the price of breakfast policy.
Yeah, last month we asked you to change the reduced price breakfast category to free breakfast effective at the beginning of next year. Mrs. Huggins and I miscommunicated, and I will apologize to you for that. Actually, that change went into effect at the beginning of February, so we'll just ask you to vote to do that retroactively rather than the beginning of next year.
Any questions? Hearing none, new business, joint purchasing.
So we'll ask you to approve the joint purchase for gasoline and diesel fuel. Actually, it was a very timely thing because this was done when the price of oil was quite low, and although it's starting to go up again a little bit. So 87 octane gasoline, $1.81.7 a gallon, and diesel fuel at $1.96.91 per gallon. So we'll ask you to award that bid via the joint purchasing consortium for gasoline and diesel fuel for next year. Mr. Martindale can answer any questions you might have on that.
Any other questions?
Our timing was very, very good. I guess you could say that. Market timing is a lot of luck, but the group kept watching the prices go down, and we met and we decided let's not wait for our traditional time to put this out to bid. Let's jump on it now. So when we met last week, I believe it was, and we got the bid prices in, we decided to lock it in and not take any chance and continue waiting. As a comparison, for the current school year that we're in, and we thought our timing was good last spring as prices continue to rise. Our bid price for diesel that we're paying is $3.02 per gallon, and our current price for gasoline that we're paying is $2.989 per gallon. So again, you get lucky, and it's timing, and so. But anyway, we're going to save money. Conferred with Mr. Swink, and he reviewed the pricing and the contract with Grooms, and I talked to Mr. Showman at Grooms, and the district's going to realize, and then Charlie will give you the final number, but we're going to realize $5 per day saving on the diesel-powered vehicles. So the number of diesel-powered vehicles times $5 times the number of days busing, and $6 per day on the gasoline-powered vehicles. So every little bit helps. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Mario? The next item then would be the 15-16 proposed school calendar. The calendar that I drafted for you would have the teacher's first in-service day on August 20th, with the first day of instruction slated for Tuesday, August the 25th. A suggestion that came to me after I sent this out was that one of our snow days be moved from Wednesday, March 30th back to March 24th instead, which would be the Thursday before Easter as opposed to the Wednesday after Easter. So we can certainly consider that, and I will give that to you as an alternate draft next month. Another issue that we have, we found out after we did this, that the WPIAL has moved football camps, starting a football camp back to August 17th. And we were concerned that that might crunch things a little bit in terms of getting our football players ready to play in time. So I had Mr. Swink talk to Coach Adams. He indicated that possibly he could use one more day, but overall the calendar that we have would work for him. So we'll also present a third draft with that August 26th as perhaps our starting day instead of August 25th, and tweak it a little bit that way. And then we will consider all of those drafts and might have a little bit more information concerning WPIAL requirements at that point in time as well.
Now, you said next month, but you mean next week or next month?
Next week.
Anyone have any input right now before you have options in front of you? Hearing none. Middle school.
One thing I don't have listed on here is the school picnic because it falls after the school year. It's June the 10th again. I believe it's the 10th, so it's not on this calendar. And just to give you an idea what neighboring districts are doing, Mount Pleasant, their tentative calendar starts on the 25th, first day for students. York would be the 26th. Greensburg-Salem, the 26th. Their last day would be June 1st. Hempfield is looking at starting school on the 31st and being done on the 3rd. And Penn Trafford the 27th and being done on May 26th. So we are pretty much in line with what Mount Pleasant is doing and York. A couple days off of Penn Trafford. Hempfield is starting later than most of the districts that are involved in our region of the county.
What's the VOTEX starting date?
I believe the VOTEX starting date is on or about the 25th, 26th. So that's what I tried to do. I tried to make our calendar reasonably congruent with VOTEX. I don't have that in front of me, I don't think.
Anybody else have any questions?
Maybe I did, Mike. Monday the 24th is the first day of instruction for VOTEC.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
One of the things that we tried to do with this calendar is not have a full week of school for students during that first week. That becomes a little bit difficult for our very youngest students.
Middle school boys baseball team?
There's been some interest expressed in the formation of a middle school boys baseball team as a feeder program for our high school program, as well as a way to engage students in another sport at the middle school level. So I've asked Mr. Swink to talk to you a little bit about that interest and what it might look like, and then we'll have you consider that for next week if you would like to do that.
Okay, thank you again, let me address you on this issue. When we looked at our policy, when we rewrote our policy, one of the things we looked at was building our programs and providing opportunities for the kids. When we looked over our feeder programs and what we're doing for the high school, the one thing we do lack on is baseball. We have quite a few kids that go to track. We have middle school track, and we have a softball program that's becoming a very good resource for our high school team right now to be able to fill into our, the kids that are coming up to see if they want to play softball. They learn the rules of the game in middle school, so they're ready by the time they hit high school. It looks to me, and when talking to Coach Shipley, that some of the baseball in the area has declined a little bit. I don't know if the kids don't have the opportunity to play as much baseball as they have, or there's as many teams available to them. But he had, I guess, expressed interest to some of the people, and some people have come to him, and he started, and I told him he kind of needed to do like an informal survey, see if it was something that was really that we could do. Right now, from what he has found out, he has approximately 18 kids that have pretty much committed that they want to play or they would play. Most of them are 7th and 8th graders, more 7th graders than 8th grade, which is actually good when you look for the future of the program, whether it's going to stay. Quite a few. I talked with Mr. Masha and Dr. Scott, and we went over what he was looking at. there's been interest even in the school just because they heard of it. Some of the 5th and 6th graders would even like to play, and obviously we can't do that. But as long as we have kids that are in the system that want to play, I think it could be a good opportunity for us to build a program. He has, like I said, 15 to 18 kids that were committed. Parents have even said that they're all for it. He has about 18 games. Now, Brian did a lot of this on his own because I told him, number one, I wanted to make sure that there was teams to play. Number two, that if we started a program, we didn't do something and we only had 6 kids come out and then we look like we really don't know what we're doing. But he has 18 teams, schools that he has called, and they have saved him a spot depending on whether we get the permission to start this program. We're finding out there's quite a few schools that are starting this middle school. Derry was one that started it last year. Northgate called us today. There's a lot of local teams, so we're not going to travel real far. The thing is, when we looked at it logistically, it's going to be a little bit difficult because obviously everybody knows in the spring with the weather, it's very difficult sometimes to schedule games and then know you're going to be able to play tomorrow in middle school when you have a varsity game that you got to get in. But we're willing to work with a lot, with the fields we got. Brian's got the game scheduled when he's away that the kids would be able to play on our field on top. Some of the things he looked at, he said that, they'd be playing on days they're away. The field will be used, when they're not there as well. We won't be adding any cost for transportation pretty much to get the kids to the field because we already have the system in place where we're taking the track kids up. We have buses that come past the high school that will be able to segregate for how many of those kids if they need to get dropped off at the high school. We already have the activity buses coming to the high school and the baseball fields plus the middle school wherever they'll be. If the weather's bad, they still will probably use the SCS gym as much as they can, as well as up at the high school, with the batting cage that we got there when we can get them in. We're going to produce our own schedule. Like I said, this won't be a WPIL schedule for the first year, or at least maybe the first couple years. The reason being, if we feel that it's not something we want to do or we can't do, we're able to back out of it, eliminate it without being committed to where we're into a conference or something like that. But a lot of the schools we're finding out, like I said, don't really have the conferences. They're just picking up the kids to be able to play because they understand the same thing. We may schedule 20 games, but if we get 10 in, that's a bonus. With depending on the weather, whether we could play 20 or we may be only play 10. Looking at some of the costs of the thing, the only thing I can see that the expense-wise we would have in it would be officials. You probably, Brian was telling me, we probably could get away with one. Normally there's 2. And then bus transportation for approximately maybe 6 away games. The uniforms, we have extra uniforms from the varsity games that we've had, our varsity teams over the past years. There's quite a few of them that are in good shape. They're, the older ones they had, but they're still decent enough that we could pass them down. Equipment-wise, we have more than enough for catching equipment, bats, balls, some of the other things that they would need. So we won't have to, spend any money to equip the team. We've already had a couple people come up and they're interested in donating some of the items. Some of them have talked about being able to buy the baseball hats for them if they were able to. And, obviously that's all things that we'd have to look at as we go because we're kind of feeling our way through it. Like I said, we got the football field this year that we're able to get on that turf where we didn't have that last year to practice. And that's all the teams, even softball, baseball. And if we get to middle school, we'd be able to use that if we didn't have the baseball field if they were up there. So we got options to make this go. Brian, and one thing that I think we've lost a lot of these kids, whether they come out of the elementary school and they don't play baseball no more, and we find them when they come to the high school, they're already behind a little bit. It takes them a while to get back into what a varsity level baseball is. I think with this we're able to do kind of like we're doing with basketball, the middle school basketball, the football, every other program. The kids can be taught what Brian's looking for. They'll understand what they're getting into as a varsity, type program and what's expected out of them. Plus the fact that they're playing and you can get, Brian can almost know who maybe his pitcher's going to be, who his catchers are going to be, what positions, and teach them while they're coming up so he knows as they move up through where they're going to play. We will have probably 2 coaches and we're going to do just the same as we did with the softball. They will be volunteer coaches and we've got a couple guys that are in line right now that are interested, and so they would be ready to go pending the approval. And I think that's pretty much all that I see on it, but I think it would be a good opportunity. And like I said, if it doesn't go, being where we're at, if we decide it's something that's not viable, we can always take a look at it again next year or at the end of the year, come back and meet and see how it went and decide if that's something we want to continue.
Questions?
One thing with it too, if you look at and me and Dr. Scott said on a webinar about Title IX, and that's the opportunities in athletic for boys and girls. And you look at our middle school, we do have a middle school girls, but we don't have anything for the boys. I mean, pretty much everywhere else, we're equal, on all sports opportunities that are offered. So, I mean, it's a way to get ourselves balanced that way. Plus, again, maybe help our programs and follow our policies, hopefully building our programs.
Mr. Miller, had a question?
Makes some sense what you're saying. Does anybody know, I was wondering about the summer programs. There's summer baseball programs out at Ruffsdale, and I think down at the park where the field is down here. Is this complementary to that during the school year, and are we in conversation with those people? Presumably some of the same kids would be playing in both places.
And that's what we're hoping. Maybe we can generate enough interest, because once, it's the same kind of deal with softball. Once baseball in the high school level or middle school levels finishes, then they move right into the rec ball. It doesn't really overlap that much. I heard last year that they had some issues with that Colt level league with kids that are the middle school level. They had maybe 2 teams out there, and I think that if we can maybe get them playing a little more, it's amazing. I think a lot of kids will play if they have the opportunity. This is 18 kids. We haven't even really advertised or said, hey, we got a team or nothing. So there may be more kids that come out of the woodwork and express interest. I don't know. Every kid usually likes to play baseball. But the one thing we did look at, in case, the question will come up about track, obviously middle school, that we may pull some kids away. And I had Coach Shipley and Coach Pritz and Coach Spadero kind of look at the kids that came out. And there's a couple that may go to track. And even Coach Shipley is willing to take a look at that. If there's a kid that really is good in track and, maybe if we can work around that, he's willing to do that. But obviously, the two are very... you got a game here or a track meet there, it's a little difficult. But I talked to him about that because we ran into that issue with the high school. There are some kids that play baseball that probably can sprint and maybe give us that champions that we need, and we're going to work that into our system this year because obviously, one thing we do, we want to win, we want to compete.
I think another thing is, you were saying about, playing both. I think if maybe a student, a boy in the middle school, can't afford to play Colt or whatever it is at Ruffsdale, then this at least gives them an avenue of playing baseball because there is no cost to the student.
Well, that's another issue. It's a perfect issue there too, because sometimes there's a lot of cost involved to, play a rec league, and if you don't have the means, this is an opportunity to be able to see if this is something you want to do with really little cost to you at all.
Any more questions?
It's going to be a little difficult, obviously, starting it out. And, the logistics is the only thing that worried me about the whole thing, just making sure we can get all the games in, because sometimes when you tell a parent that we're going to play games and all of a sudden the weather, like last year, we got JV games in there, we got baseball, and then you got middle school, and then we only got really one field. So that part of it will be the difficult, but I think Brian really wants to make a go of it, so I think we can maybe make it happen if you all give me the approval to make a go of it.
Thank you, Mr. Swing. That's all.
The solicitor has something for the public.
We had a bright, clear morning, and I had gone over to McClure to tour the National Envelope, what was formerly the National Envelope Plan, with the Fayette County assessment officials and our expert as a part of the process of going forward on the assessment appeal. That status conference with Judge George in Fayette County has been rescheduled to May of this year. On the Scottdale housing case, the property owner has obtained a status conference date on that case for March. So pursuant to your previous instructions, I'm entering my appearance on that, and we'll be discussing with the board in the future about handling the defense of that case. That's all I have for public, and actually don't have any executive session item tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, you had something?
Sure. I mentioned the last meeting the No Child Left Behind bill is up for discussion, and it needs to be is being revised. So they're having hearings on it in Washington, and then on Tuesday there was an article in the Tribune Review on the discussion, and it was largely on testing. I made 10, so I'll make Dr. Molnar will make more than for the staff. Sorry. So the question that was largely debated is how much testing and how much should be mandated at the federal level, and that would be in the No Child Left Behind. And this kind of got me to thinking, and I'm somewhat old hat here because I've been around since '89. But I remember when No Child Left Behind was being discussed, and I think Ms. Shipley, you remember Dr. Kenny talking about it in his misgivings. But as I viewed it, and as a board member, I have here a lot of family who are teachers, and as parents, what No Child, part of the legacy today is a kind of a culture of testing. So this is kind of a shot across the bow here, at least where I come across. If we want to speak to it as a board, what I would suggest is that our staff draft something and we want to speak to it, and then we would discuss it in that kind of a context. But this is my own these are my own observations here. And in fact, I'm just going to have just 2 minutes review this here with the board here in regards to that. Number one is I understand the rationale behind the law in having more accountability in public education and in especially helping the children in underperforming urban schools. What I have to say, in my context, we're a rural, medium-sized Pennsylvania school. The consequences has been a culture of too much testing, as if more standardized tests would bring better educational results. I'm not convinced of that, and we are not. And would like a reduction in the frequency and number of standardized tests on the state and national level. Education has traditionally been a local and a state project and has the most potential for teacher, citizen, and parent commitment for achieving on that level. Overemphasis on testing pushes the need for teachers to teach for the test. Although an element of testing has always been present, when taken at the present level, it removes too much of the main pleasure of teaching and learning for its own sake. And the current bare bones approach, math and reading, of No Child Left Behind has insufficient categories for learning beyond the basic skills. This deductive approach leaves out the whole terrain of civics, history, literature, music, languages, and the arts. And finally, and I'll preface this by saying I was quite influenced, and some of you were there, several years ago. There was a Chinese speaker, a man who was raised in elementary schools in China, and he's spent his adult life here in the United States. And his statement was, in the degree to which we are changing what has been the strength of American education, and he gave the examples of the number of inventions that come out of our culture, the sense of experimentation, patents. It is just totally, and he says this comes out of a school system does not try to have everybody a square peg and a high and that kind of a school system, but a school system that allows a great deal of latitude on the local level to teach and to learn in that kind of way. So this is on what I consider part of it. I was influenced by that, but in my small travels, I also think I've seen a part of it. There is something uniquely American about our educational culture which has emphasized learning the basic skills in the context of experimentation, entrepreneurship, imagination, and self-reliance. None of these attributes are enhanced by a standardized and a factory approach which tends to characterize the No Child Left Behind testing and minimalist scoring. None of this is to say testing is inherently bad, it is good and it is necessary. Only that in the context of No Child Left Behind, it should be reduced. We ourselves are children. Okay, I'm just saying here, we've benefited from it, and I, so that's a comment on it. I just, as legislative liaison, I think if as a board, this is a personal, obviously a personal statement here, if we do want to say something to No Child Left Behind, it's going to be in discussion in the next weeks, and it'll certainly go through a number of committees before it's revised or rewritten. We may want to speak to it, but this is at least my own take on having seen it as it's played out here in Southmoreland in our district here. So, and just to say this also, I'm a sort of an anti too many standardized tests, because I think it takes up. But I've not said too much about this, and partly because that's the name of the game, and I kind of look at it. If you're in the WPIL, you play by the rules of the WPIL. So, Dr. Scott, you've been a great one in collaborative learning and passing, and I'm totally for that. So it's not speaking against what we've done here at Southmore and what we're trying to do, but only if we can shape the rules, then let's shape them, and that's what I think would be valuable. So,
thank you. Is there interest from the board for the administration to put together a resolution for us to sign for one of the senators and representatives that will be representing us?
I think it's a good idea.
Seeing nobody nodding no, I guess.
We'll have a resolution prepared for next week.
Thank you. Citizens' comments?
I have some comments on additional policies, and I know these have already been reviewed by 3 members of the board and administration, but I am really confused. If you look at 006 on meetings, it says, notice of all regular and special meetings of the board shall be given to school directors by mail no later than 3 days prior to the meeting. Now, I've talked to people, and I know when I was on the board, I've never received a letter 3 days before a meeting, and that's still in your policy. Then it goes on to say, if you look at page 10, it says that the minutes of the last meeting will be provided to the board 3 days before a meeting. But then it says up above that the agenda with this report shall be provided 2 days before a meeting. So it doesn't make sense to me whether, if you're giving the minutes come with the agenda 2 days before the meeting, but it says that they're to be provided 3 days before the meeting. Another concern that I have has to do with policy 004, which is membership, section 7, expenses. And I was kind of surprised about this. What it says here is the school board, every member of the school board can attend 2 out-of-state conferences. That would be in the nation, I'm assuming. So that would be 18 out-of-state conferences every year that are authorized for the board, but an unlimited number of conferences at the state level. So that could be 100 conferences a year. Now, I know you're going to say, no, that never happens, and therefore I think the policy should be amended to reflect the reality. It says the board shall identify annually the issues, objectives, and cost benefits that can be ascribed to participation by board members in conferences, workshops, and conventions. If that is done, how is that given to the public? It also says that funds for conference attendance shall be budgeted on an annual basis. This I thought was a bit confusing, because if you have an unlimited number of conferences at the state level and up to 18 national conferences, I don't know how you would do that. But then under Section 7, it says that the attendance at a conference is authorized by the board. Now, I've always seen if a student is going to a choral concert or a band concert or something like that, when teachers request to go, different people request to go, it becomes an agenda item. But it's been my experience in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if a board member decides they want to go to a conference in California, they just walk in and say, I'm going to this conference in California, and they're given a check and their advance payment, and it's okay. But I think you should pay a little more attention to those sections of the policy, and I think you need to very much correct the one that talks about how you notify board members and when they get their minutes as well as their agendas.
Thank you.
Seeing no other citizens' comments, any board members have anything else? Mr. Ault?
Yeah, Mike, just a quick comment about a couple of teachers on the positive side, not on the negative side. Usually what I have to say here from calls I get, letters I get, conversations I have are usually negative, but it's nice to get a call from someone on a positive note. I had a call from a parent who said that she can't believe that two of the teachers took the time and the effort and went way above what she thought they should do, and she couldn't say enough about them. So I'd just like to say to Mr. Canini, I believe it is, and Mr. Cartwright, you've done a very good job, and somebody out there appreciates you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel and real estate and okay. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Miller, second by Mrs. Rhodes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?